Dear brothers and sisters, through the spirit of St. Augustine, this is a homily for the 16th Sunday in Ordinary Time, Year B. Christ, in the Gospel reading of today, invites his disciples to rest for a while with him because they had accomplished their first missionary work. This invitation shows Jesus Christ as a good shepherd who had pity on his disciples as well as on the crowd. Later on, in details in this homily, we shall see how Christ responded to the needs of his disciples and the one of the crowd. In the first place, in ancient Near East, the image of the shepherd was borrowed from the cultural and agricultural setting. It is widely attributed to God as the Good Shepherd, indeed, the true Good Shepherd to the chosen people. Moreover, we have various personalities chosen as kings, but with a background of being shepherds. In our society today, shepherds are not as valued as ancient times. Turning to the Gospel passage today, Jesus Christ is the fulfillment of the Good Shepherd promised in the Old Testament. In addition to that, in the first reading, we hear of bad shepherds in Israel who were misleading the people of God. Nevertheless, God promised to give them a good shepherd who will lead his people in good pasture. This good shepherd would be a true king, wise, honest, and above all, upright. Hence, all these qualities find fulfillment in the person of Jesus Christ, as witnessed in the Gospel passage of today. Secondly, the Gospel verses today from St. Mark acts as a bridge or introduction that links between the first accomplished mission section and the introduction to the bread section, as marked by the presence of the crowd that will later on be fed. As a good shepherd, Christ responds to the needs of the apostles and the ones of the crowd too. First and foremost, the disciples in this passage are referred to as apostles, meaning envoys, or rather the ones sent. When the apostles returned after their first mission, Christ had pity on them because they were weary and tired. Therefore, he urged them to rest for a while with him in a deserted place. This shows that Christ, as a good shepherd, had pity on them and responds to their needs. Let us take note that to have pity in this context means the deep feeling aroused by seeing misery or misfortune, followed by a willingness to correct or to do something in order to correct or improve the situation. That is how Christ felt. As a matter of fact, this pity or compassion made Jesus Christ to heal the sick, to deliver the possessed, to feed the hungry, and to forgive sinners. Let us implore God's compassion in times of distress so that he may save us. Anyhow, back on the needs of the apostles, as I mentioned previously, one may ask this question: did they really have rest? With the events that took place at the moment, they didn't have time even to have a bite. But then, when the crowd followed Jesus and his disciples, Christ didn't chase them, but rather he was moved with pity on them. The crowd, in a way, opted to rest with Christ for a while, and indeed, Christ postponed his rest, then started teaching them. Christ here responds to the needs of the crowd by teaching them, feeding them spiritually. Finally, what does Christ teach us today? He invites us to have rest like him and with him. In other words, today we talk of Sunday as a day of rest and also personal or group retreat or recollection. More importantly, nowadays we have retreats and recollections online, thanks to the means of technology that the servants of God use to provide such services to the people of God. For example, there were 2 Christians who participated in a choir competition. It was about how to sing Psalm 23 that we have heard today as the responsorial psalm. This particular psalm is well sung and known. Frankly speaking, the first cantor sang it very well and particularly with good diction, of which the whole was filled with acclamations at the end. On the other hand, when the second one finished, very few people clapped. Then thereafter, the second cantor added, "I don't know how to sing very well, but I know the shepherd that this psalm is talking about." The crowd was left in awe and much appreciation for that. We may know very well the scripture, but do we know and experience who it talks about? We live in a busy and digital world today, such that within a fraction of a second, we know what is happening far from us, but we don't know what is happening next to us. In the world of today, the Bible talks of the crowd that was like sheep without a shepherd. But in our days, we talk of many bad shepherds with sheep, but few are good shepherds. That is why Christ invites us to rest for a while by having a retreat or a recollection or some moments of personal meditation so as to refresh, evaluate, reconnect, and move on in our Christian life. When God created the world, at the end, he rested on the 7th day and consecrated the 7th day as a day for us to rest with him for a while. Christ, as our good shepherd, invites us to rest like him and with him. To conclude, rest is important in our life so as to avoid burnout and spiritual tiredness. May Christ have pity on us, save us, so that like him we may have some time to rest, and with him we may rest for a while. Amen. Have a blessed Sunday.